Hey guys, tonight we're trading cobblestones for dust, columns for minarets, and togas for salver pants. We're heading east, not to some mystical dreamland of sultans and silk, but to the real thing, the Ottoman Empire, specifically 17th century Constantinople, a city of spires and smoke, where cats rule the alleys and you don't own a toothbrush. But don't get too excited. You're not strolling through the Topkapi Palace, sipping rose water from a porcelain cup while dancers twirl in candlelight. You're not a vizier. You're not a poet. You're not an architect designing domes that touch the sky. You, my friend, are just you, dropped barefoot and clueless into the largest city in the empire, armed with nothing but vague curiosity and a mild allergy to almonds. So before we begin, if you genuinely enjoy this kind of beautifully detailed historical suffering, take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps more than you think, and I love knowing where in the world you're watching from. Let me know in the comments what time it is where you are, and if your current room contains plumbing, pillows, or any concept of temperature control. Now dim the lights. Take a breath. Maybe grab a blanket. Not too nice, just enough to make you appreciate softness. And prepare to be yanked backward through time like a sack of turnips tossed on a donkey cart. Because tonight, you wake up in the Ottoman Empire, and you wake up poor. No silk, no coffee, no bloody, no privacy, no second chances. Just you, your itchy blanket, the sound of a rooster having an existential crisis, and the distant echo of someone swearing in Greek. You open your eyes to a room that doesn't quite qualify as a room. It's wooden, sure, but calling it a house would be generous. More like a wooden box nailed to the side of a larger, equally unstable wooden box. You're in what they call a kanak, which can mean home or structure barely resisting collapse, depending on the season. The air smells like smoke, onions, and damp wool. The walls are thin. The floor sags like it's tired of supporting the weight of your family's collective disappointment. And there's no glass in the window, just a wooden shutter and a vague hope the wind stays polite. There is no bed. There is a mat, stuffed with straw. The straw is old. The straw is moving. Something scuttles when you shift your weight. You pray it's a mouse. It's probably not. You're lying shoulder to shoulder with two cousins, one of whom snores like a dying mule, and an uncle who isn't really your uncle but has nowhere else to sleep and claims to know how to fix shoes. He does not. The blanket, if you can call it that, is scratchy and smells like boiled goat and desperation. You wrap it tighter and hope your skin stops itching soon. It won't. The ceiling groans. The walls whisper. You hear coughing from the room next door, deep, wet, hopeless coughing. You hear a baby crying. You hear someone mutter a prayer, then immediately stub their toe and curse in Ottoman Turkish. You understand none of it, but the feeling is universal. The day has begun, and no one is ready. The call to prayer begins. It rises like fog through the city, long, melodic, undeniable. The voice of the muezzin echoes from the nearest minaret, curling through alleys, bouncing off rooftops, reaching you through the hole where a window should be. It is haunting. It is beautiful. It is also far too early, and you're already sweating. You sit up. Your back cracks like a drop bowl. You rub your eyes with fingers that smell faintly of wood smoke and pickled cabbage. You are 23 years old. You feel 90. The fire in the brazier has gone out. It's cold, or maybe it's hot. This room doesn't believe in stable temperatures. You're either freezing or you're slow cooking in your own humidity. You reach for your shoes and find only one. The other is under someone's knee. That someone is not waking up. You accept defeat and shuffle toward the door in one shoe and a sock you borrowed from a cousin last spring and never returned. You open the door. The hallway is dark. The building creaks. Someone groans. A cat darts past you, then immediately vomits something unspeakable and dashes into the shadows like a furry ghost of poor dietary choices. You have not eaten. You have not bathed. You have not even properly stood up. And already you are tired. This is the Ottoman Empire, and you've only been awake for 5 minutes. You shuffle into the main room of the konak, which sounds elegant, but feels like a repurposed chicken coop with ambitions. The floor is wooden, but every board complains with your weight. The walls lean at angles that defy both geometry and trust. Nothing in this room was made to last, least of all your optimism. There's a brazier in the corner, cold now, with yesterday's ashes sulking inside like the ghost of heat. Someone tried to cook tea in it last night. No one remembers who. The pot is still there, blackened, dented, and empty. Like your stomach, like your wallet, like your future. A draft creeps in under the door. It smells like damp stones and distant goats. Your shoulders tense instinctively, a reflex you've developed from years of weather-based trauma. You glance toward the shuttered window. One slat is missing. It's been missing for 6 months. A neighbor promised to fix it. He's dead now. Typhus, probably. Or a horse. Or both. The walls are bare. There are no paintings, no shelves, no heirlooms. What would you hang? Your regrets. The only object of beauty is a cracked ceramic bowl on the floor, painted once in blue and red, now mostly chipped. You found it last year in a garbage heap outside a coffee house. You keep your coins in it. There are 2. They jingle with quiet sarcasm. You crouch by a shallow wooden basin and splash your face with water someone fetched from the fountain yesterday. Maybe. It's tepid. It smells slightly like iron and profoundly like pigeons. There is no soap. Soap is expensive. Soap is what you buy when you don't need to buy lentils. You rub your face with your hands instead, trying to scrape off sleep, smoke, and the faint aura of communal disappointment. Behind you, someone stirs, your younger cousin, barely 15, already coughing like a man twice his age. He mutters something about bread and rolls back onto his side. You envy him, not for his health. He doesn't have any, but for his ability to ignore the morning. You can't. You're an adult, which in this world means you're old enough to carry things and too poor to argue. You sit back on your heels and take inventory of your body. Your neck hurts. Your shoulder hurts. Your knee makes a new noise when you bend it. You are 23 years old and falling apart like an overworked ox cart. You dress, or rather, you apply layers. You are not choosing an outfit. You're negotiating with time, sweat, and mildew. You tug on your salver, wide-legged trousers that were handed down through 3 generations and now fit you like a sagging tent with emotional damage. Your shirt has 2 patches, one intentional, one spontaneous. Your sash is more knot than fabric. Your coat is a gamble. You grab a wool cap from the hook by the door. It's damp. You put on anyway. It's not for warmth. It's to signal that you are a person and not just a man-shaped bundle of obligations. You look in the shard of mirror someone wedged into the wall. You see your face. You do not recognize it. There is no breakfast yet. No scent of tea. No bread warming on the hearth. No laughter from the kitchen because there is no kitchen. Cooking happens outdoors. Or not at all. The household is quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of fatigue. Everyone is awake. No one is ready. You step outside. The door sticks. You push harder. The latch gives way with a splintering sound that suggests you'll be fixing it again. You won't. You never fix anything. You endure it. Like everyone else. The courtyard greets you like a slap. The air is sharp, damp, and tastes like last night's firewood. A rooster screams from a rooftop. A woman next door dumps a bucket into the alley with a splash you don't dare analyze. 2 cats are fighting over something that used to be edible. A 3rd cat is watching you, judging you, as always. A neighbor limps past in sandals held together with string and spite. He nods. You nod back. No words. There is no energy for words before sunrise. Only shared nods of mutual survival. You breathe deeply. You regret it. The smell is part smoke, part garbage, part human, and 100% Ottoman. Welcome to the capital. You haven't even begun your day, and already you've broken a door, soaked your socks, and contemplated the futility of soap. And yet, there's no turning back, because the city is waking up, not gently, but like a pot lid flying off under pressure. The bazaar will be roaring soon. The mosque will fill. The carts will creak. The children will scream. The taxes will tighten. The empire moves. And you are expected to keep up. Before you can do anything meaningful with your day, before you haul, barter, pray, sweat, or even eat, there's a matter of primal urgency to attend to. Your bladder. It has been protesting for the last 20 minutes. It now demands resolution. Unfortunately, this is not the kind of world where resolution comes with privacy, porcelain, or peace. You live in the Ottoman Empire. You live in a shared home with no plumbing. And so your only option is the hella. The hella is not a bathroom. It is a dark corner of reality where dignity goes to die. You shuffle around the side of your building, passing between two walls that lean inward like they're conspiring against you. The ground is muddy, uneven, and covered in the footprints of chickens, cats, children, and people who no longer bother to avoid anything. You hold a clay pitcher of water in your right hand. It is your only companion on this humiliating pilgrimage. The hella itself is a wooden shack. Barely. One wall leans at 40 degrees. The door doesn't exist. A tattered cloth hangs in its place, fluttering like it's trying to escape. The roof sags under the weight of a pigeon who looks like it's reconsidering life. The stench announces itself 3 steps before the threshold, a blend of mildew, ammonia, and fermented shame. Inside, there's a hole in the ground. It is ringed with worn, wet wood. There is no seat, no platform, no ventilation, just the hole, the cold, and the knowledge that hundreds have squatted here before you, none with grace. The air is thick, still, and sticky. You lower yourself slowly, balancing on trembling legs. Try not to think about the dampness beneath your feet or the droplets that defy gravity. There is no toilet paper. That does not exist here. There's only the water you brought in your left hand, and the quiet, eternal prayer that no one walks by right now. Privacy is not a concept. The cloth covering the door flaps open with every breeze, revealing you to passing chickens, children, and once, memorably, the bread seller's apprentice. You make eye contact. You both pretend it never happened. The process is undignified, brief, and scarring. You pour the water carefully, cleansing what you must cleanse with the tools available to you. You are a grown adult crouching above a pit of human history, armed with nothing but gravity and modesty. And modesty is losing. There is no soap when you're done, just a cracked jug near the entrance, holding water that's been reused so many times it has a personality. You splash your hands in it anyway, and try not to imagine how many others did the same. Your fingers come away wet, but never clean. Never. You step back into the alley, blinking at the daylight. You breathe. You regret that too. Someone passes you on the way in. A woman with a child on her hip and the dead-eyed stare of someone who has already accepted that the hella is forever part of her life. You nod. She does not nod back. There is no camaraderie here. Only shared trauma. You walk away, clay pitcher empty, soul slightly dimmer. You have used the toilet, if it can be called that. And now, with your bodily integrity more or less intact, it is time to face the rest of your day, including food, work, and emotional instability. But the shame? The shame stays with you. It always does. You re-enter the konak with a shuffle born not of fatigue, but of quiet spiritual erosion. You have not fought in a war. You have not lost a friend. You have simply gone to the toilet. And yet you return as a changed man. You pass through the creaking doorway like a ghost and are greeted by the unmistakable smell of morning poverty. A blend of wood smoke, feet, boiled something, and whatever is currently rotting in the corner near the storage shelf that no one has had the courage to approach since spring. The room is dim. Its only light a shaft of sun squeezing between two crooked shutters, casting dust motes across the air like the ghostly procession of last week's regrets. Your aunt, or possibly your mother's cousin's widow, no one's really clear on the specifics, is crouched by the hearth, such as it is, squinting into a dented pot as if it might respond. There is no fire, only embers, and she's coaxing them with the intensity of a woman who has argued with smoke before and lost. She does not speak. No one does. The ritual of breakfast is not accompanied by joy, music, or conversation. It is accompanied by silence, coughing, and the faint gnashing of molars chewing something old. Your breakfast is waiting. Not served, not prepared, just there, a wedge of flatbread from yesterday, or possibly the day before, a handful of dark olives with pits as sharp as your self-awareness, and a knob of goat cheese that smells like it remembers better times. You sit cross-legged on the floor, careful not to lean on the wall, which has been damp since autumn and seems to be growing a second kind of moss. Your plate is a cracked tile. Your spoon is your fingers. You tear off a piece of bread. It resists. This is not the soft, warm, honey-kissed bread of Turkish fairy tales. This is survival bread, dry, heavy, a defensive weapon if necessary. It has edges. It has opinions. It does not yield easily to teeth, and your molars already hate you for waking up. You chew in silence, and with each chew, your jaw protests louder. But you keep going because hunger outranks pain in this empire. You move to the olives. They are black, shriveled, and oily in the way old lamp wicks are oily. They leave a bitter film on your tongue, and one pit nearly cracks your tooth. This is not unusual. The cheese is next. You sniff it first, a habit. It has that sharp, sour bite that suggests it was wrapped in cloth and forgotten behind a water jug for 2 weeks, then remembered and considered aged. It is dry on the outside, soft in the middle, and tastes of salt, milk, and penance. Someone passes you a cup, unglazed clay, chipped around the rim, filled with water from the courtyard fountain. It is lukewarm, metallic, and contains a small, floating memory of whatever was last dipped into the jug. You sip, knowing better than to drink deeply. Your stomach is not fragile, but it has rules, and if you break them, you'll regret it before lunch. There is no coffee. That is for merchants and storytellers and men with time. There is no honey. That is for weddings, festivals, and people who did not spend the winter patching a roof with linen and prayer. There is no butter, no fruit, no meat. There are rumors of eggs, once, last spring, but they're treated like folk legends and spoken of only when children are safely out of earshot. You chew, you swallow, you breathe and smoke. You chew again. Outside, the sound of a street vendor calling out prices for cucumbers wafts in, but you don't move. You couldn't afford them anyway. You finish the last olive, wipe your fingers on your pant leg, a napkin by necessity, and nod to no one in particular, which in this house is as close to saying thank you as anyone ever gets. The meal is done. You're not full. You're not nourished. You're simply no longer starving, which is as close to luxury as your station allows. Your breath smells faintly of garlic, regret, and something you cannot name but recognize deeply. Outside, the day is brightening. Somewhere, someone is already shouting. You rise slowly, bones creaking, stomach complaining, brain half numb with low blood sugar and existential dread. Time for work, because in the Ottoman Empire, no one eats for free. There's no ceremony to leaving the house. No good luck. No have a productive day. No sack lunch. You push open the crooked door of the Canuck, step into the street, and begin moving because the only alternative is staying, and staying means chores, questions, or being handed a list of cousins to escort to the healer. Work is simpler. Work has rules. Work, at the very least, doesn't pretend to be kind. The street is already alive, though alive may not be the word you choose. It pulses. It groans. It smokes. The air is dense with cooking fires, donkey dung, tannery runoff, yesterday's fish guts, and the eternal sigh of rotting wood. You blink at the sun climbing reluctantly above the rooftops, a pale disk in a sky the color of boiled lentils. The alley beneath your feet is uneven, stone and dirt and patches of mystery, and your sandals have all the support of wet paper. You walk carefully, not from elegance, but from experience. A misstep here can cost a week of pain and a month's wages. Your job isn't written on paper. No one hired you with a smile and a handshake. You're what Constantinople always needs more of: a back with legs. You're a lifter, a hauler, a bringer of things. Some days you carry firewood. Other days, barrels of salted fish. Today, you suspect from the tone of the old man who flagged you down near the fountain, it will be bricks. It is always bricks when your shoulders still hurt from the last time. You follow him through winding alleys into a district that smells like limestone, lime dust, and men pretending not to cry. The construction site is not a marvel of planning. It is a pile of stone, shouting, tools, and shame. The foreman is barefoot, angry, and chewing something that makes his spit red. He does not greet you. He gestures at a heap of clay bricks and then at a stairwell that looks like it wants to die. You nod. You pick up the bricks. You climb. That is your morning. There is no pulley, no wheelbarrow, no help, just your arms, your breath, and a gentle sense of doom that intensifies with every step. The stairs are narrow and irregular, a trap designed by a sadistic god of geometry. You reach the top, drop the bricks, turn, and descend. Again, again, again. You sweat through your shirt. You soak your sash. Your knees begin to hum in a key you do not recognize. Your vision blurs slightly every third trip. No one thanks you. On the sixth trip, someone shouts at you for stepping too loudly. On the eighth, a teenager throws a plum pit from a balcony and hits you in the head. He laughs. You keep walking. You're not allowed to retaliate. You're poor. You have no title. You're background noise. By mid-morning, you've moved what feels like 1,000 bricks. In reality, it's closer to 200. Your hands are raw. Your shoulders are numb. You pause for water. A rusty jug passed between you and 3 other workers who all smell like roasted garlic and wet wool. You sip, grateful and disgusted at once. The foreman glares at you. You get back to work. Around noon, a moment of mercy, the bricks stop coming. Not because anyone cares about your well-being, but because the man delivering them is late. You sit on a plank of wood. You breathe. You stretch, and immediately regret stretching. Your spine makes a sound like someone stepping on an old door. This is not a career. This is not a calling. This is gravity-based punishment disguised as industry. You're not building a mosque. You are not laying the foundation for history. You're just a body among other bodies, all trying to keep their bones inside their skin long enough to earn the coin that buys the bread that keeps the bones moving. You consider quitting. Then you remember there is nothing to quit to. If you are lucky, tomorrow will bring a different task. Delivering laundry for a woman who doesn't tip, or carrying a crippled rooster to the butcher, or walking halfway across the city with a sack of onions for a man who will claim he only owes you half the agreed sum. If you're unlucky, you'll be back here. Or worse, someone will decide you're strong enough to help dig a new privy trench behind the spice market. That smell never leaves your nose. You still dream about it. The sun has begun to move westward. Your stomach growls. The foreman spits. Someone swears. You pick up another brick. This is your empire. This is your legacy. This is what keeps the dome standing. And you still have half a day to go. The bricks are behind you for now. Not because the day is over. You should be so lucky, but because the foreman waved you off with a grunt and the kind of shrug that suggests he either owes you coin or owes you nothing and doesn't care which. You rub your shoulder, wipe your hands on your sash, and step back into the open, into the full chaos of Constantinople at noon. The city does not ease into its day. It does not build up to a crescendo. It begins loud and stays louder. You turn the corner, and immediately the street hits you like a wet bag of onions hurled from a second-floor window, which, to be fair, is something that has happened before, and may again. You walk carefully because the stones are slick. Some are worn smooth by centuries of feet and donkey hooves. Some are cracked, crooked, or missing entirely. Between them runs a slow, glistening trickle of runoff water mixed with animal droppings, dishwater, and something you sincerely hope is only dye from a fabric shop. You do not step in the middle. You stick to the raised edge, where a row of boots and sandals inch along like ants on the rim of a drowning bowl. The air is thick, not just with heat or smoke, but with intention. The scent of roasted eggplants, crushed mint, charcoal, spoiled figs, and sweat hits your face all at once, like a soup made by someone who hates you personally. From one direction comes incense from a nearby mosque. From another, dried fish. From everywhere, cats. They are everywhere, lounging on crates, sleeping atop rugs for sale, darting under carts, hissing at chickens, stealing bread from inattentive vendors. They're not pets. They're not strays. They're the ruling class. They make eye contact with you like landlords, and if you step too close, they don't move. You do. Vendors scream. Not shout. Scream. Prices for chickpeas, lemons, camel wool, pickled garlic, copper pots, pistachios, each one louder than the last, trying to rip your attention like dogs fighting over scraps. Some sing their offers, others insult rivals. A few just bang metal bowls together and hope your ears bleed enough to open your purse. You pass a butcher's stall. You regret it immediately. A lamb is being skinned with the enthusiasm of a man who didn't want to be a butcher, but made peace with it through rage. Flies hover like priests at a funeral. Blood trickles into the gutter and joins the slow-moving soup of the city's innards. A boy beside the stall offers skewers of meat too red to be trusted. You shake your head. He spits near your foot and calls you a donkey. You nod. Fair. A procession tries to push through, two porters with a massive carpet rolled and roped between them like a captured beast. People yell. One man refuses to move, citing the superiority of his shop's location. The porters push harder. Someone drops a basket of pomegranates. A woman screams. A chicken escapes. Cats descend. You edge away before the yelling turns into slapping, which is always seconds away. You smell smoke. You don't know where it's coming from, but you smell it. Sour, resinous, insistent. You glance up. The rooftops are a patchwork of tiles, boards, and prayer. Laundry flaps from every window. An old woman leans out, dumps a basin of water into the alley below. You flinch. It misses. Barely. Someone grabs your arm. You twist away instinctively, already halfway to panic, but it's just a child, maybe 8, asking for bread in a voice older than yours. You have none. You pat your pockets. 2 coins. Not enough to share. You shake your head. The child vanishes. Into the crowd, into the street, into the empire. You will never see them again. You pass a tea house. Outside, men lounge on cushions, smoking narghileh, eyes half closed in the steam of their own importance. You are not welcome. Not because of your clothes, though they scream manual labor, but because you do not belong to a guild or a family name or anyone rich enough to sponsor your leisure. You pass silently, head low, not from shame, but strategy. On your left, a man sells perfume. Rose water, lemon oil, amber. He beckons you, holds a vial to your nose. You sniff. For a moment, the city disappears. Just for a moment. You imagine gardens. You imagine baths. You imagine the inside of a house with only one family in it. He smiles. You ask the price. He names a number that could feed you for a week. You walk on. The sun is directly overhead now. You are dizzy, not from heat or hunger, but from noise. Every part of the street wants something from you. Your money, your attention, your body, your apology. You sidestep a donkey, a snake charmer, a man with 3 eels in a jar, and a group of scholars debating loudly about geometry. A preacher shouts about the end of days. A mother drags 3 sons and a sheep. You think you hear music, but it might be screaming. You reach the fountain at the corner of the spice market. You wash your hands. The water is warm, metallic, not entirely clean. You dry them on your shirt. It does not help. You consider sitting. You don't. The stone is occupied by a man sleeping upright, snoring like a lion with sinus problems. You lean instead, just for a moment. This is the Ottoman street, not a place, a living thing. It does not welcome. It does not care. It devours. It roars. It shifts with every breath. It belongs to the cats, the carts, the dust, and the empire. You are a guest here, and the street does not like guests. You push off the wall. You keep walking. You do not know where you're going, but you know you can't stay still, because in this city, stillness is death. And movement, at least, means you're not finished yet. You've been walking for what feels like a week. Your mouth is dry. Your skin is coated in a fine layer of sweat, dust, and fish market memory. Your throat itches from the smoke of a dozen cooking fires and the mysterious green fog that poured out of a nearby dye shop. You are no longer just tired. You are beginning to wilt. You need water, not as a luxury, not even as refreshment. You need it the way wood needs flame. And you need it now. Luckily, this is Constantinople. Water flows here. It trickles from fountains, bursts from aqueducts, fills cisterns the size of cathedrals. The Ottomans are famous for their mastery of hydraulics, a city of domes and domed pipes. Water, in theory, is everywhere, but theory does not sweat. You do. You head toward the nearest sesame, a public fountain. Not the ornate marble structure carved with floral motifs and Quranic calligraphy that tourists sketch in travel journals 300 years from now, but a plain stone basin wedged between a bakery and a rotting wooden stall selling secondhand slippers. There is a queue. Of course there is. There is always a queue. Old women with jugs, boys with goatskins, a man with 2 buckets, and no discernible sense of urgency. You take your place and wait. The sun beats down on the line like a board guard with a stick. People shift. People sigh. Someone coughs behind you, and you flinch as if struck. You don't turn around. You know better. You count the seconds. You count your breaths. When it's your turn, you kneel and cup your hands under the spout. The water is cool, briefly. You bring it to your lips. You sip. It tastes of iron, stone, and the memory of something clean. It is the best thing you have tasted all week. You wash your face, your hands, the back of your neck. You rinse your eyes. You splash your ears for no reason other than to prove you are still human and not just a dirt sculpture animated by poverty and prayer. You feel almost alive. Almost. But that won't last. Because now someone asks, are you going to the hammam? The hammam. The bathhouse. The great Ottoman equalizer. Except it's not equal at all. There are bathhouses for the wealthy. Marble domed, fragrant. You will not see the inside of those unless you're delivering firewood or carrying a merchant's robe. Then there are the bathhouses for the rest. Damp, dark, humid crypts filled with steam, shouting, and skin. You nod anyway, because you stink, because you itch, because every part of you is tight and cracking like an old leather sandal. The hammam is the only place where you can peel off the city and remember you are a person. You pay your coin, the smaller of your two. The keeper, a man who hasn't blinked since Ramadan, grunts and waves you in. The interior is stone, sweating, hissing, ancient stone. It smells of mildew, eucalyptus, and men who forgot to dry properly. You strip, not with confidence, not with comfort, just with resignation. The steam hits you like a wet slap. It seeps into your pores, your lungs, your bones. Around you, other men sit on slabs of hot marble, scrubbing themselves, pouring buckets of warm water over their heads, arguing about taxes, love, and football matches that won't exist for centuries. No one speaks softly. No one looks away. Modesty here is theoretical. You sit. The stone is too hot. You stand. The floor is slippery. You sit again. A boy offers to scrub your back for half a coin. You can't afford it, so you do it yourself, awkwardly, furiously, as if trying to erase your life. There is no soap, not for your coin. You brought an old rag soaked in olive ash and mint leaves. It scratches more than it cleans. Your skin turns pink. You keep going. You pour water over your head again and again until your mind finally quiets. Not from peace, but from dehydration. There are no towels. You dry with your shirt. You dress damp, sweat instantly replaced by steam. You leave the hammam feeling somehow heavier and lighter at the same time. You are clean, technically, but the street is waiting. The dust will find you again. The fishmonger will spit. A donkey will sneeze in your direction, and you will return to the same state you were in this morning, dirty, tired, and quietly resentful. You walk past the fountain again. The line is longer now. A woman yells at a boy for drinking too much. The spout sputters. You lick your cracked lip. You keep walking, because water might be everywhere in this empire, but clean never stays clean for long. You keep walking, because stopping means noticing, and noticing means acknowledging that your knees ache, your left heel burns, your back is tight as a drum skin, and the dull throbbing in your shoulder has gone from annoying to oh. But you don't stop, because no one stops. Stopping is what old men do when they're ready to die. You're not old. You're just worn. You are 23 years old. You have the spine of a retired ox and the hips of someone who fell down a well last winter and never quite recovered. There is no diagnosis, no official injury, no name for the constellation of discomfort that travels your limbs like a caravan of invisible traders. There's only the ache and the knowing and the daily gamble between, do I stretch this or will that kill me? You shift your weight to the other foot. That helps for 4 steps. Then it starts to tingle, then go numb, then burn. You ignore it because there are no doctors. Not for you. There are hakim, herbalists, bone setters, wandering healers, but they cost coin, and you already spent one on a bath and the other on bread that tasted like it had been dried on a chimney. So you keep walking, broken, tired, and functionally operational. You feel something pull under your shoulder blade. It's been there since last spring when you carried 50 tiles for a man who paid you in advice and old onions. It tightens when you lift. It pinches when you sleep. Some nights you lie awake imagining what it would feel like to not feel it. Then you roll over and the pain shifts like a cat to your lower back. You pass a butcher's stall and catch your reflection in a hanging blade. You look older than your father did at 30. Your skin is wind-chapped, your eyes sunken. Your hands look like they lost a knife fight. Your fingernails are dark with earth. Your cuticles cracked. You haven't had a full night's sleep since the earthquake. Not because of fear, because the roof creaks, the neighbor snores, the cats howl, the children kick, and your own ribs press against the mat like rebukes. You remember when pain used to surprise you. A stubbed toe, a bee sting, a fall from cart. There was drama, reaction, maybe even a scream. Now it's just part of the scenery, like the smell of the fish market or the sound of prayer. Always there. Never commented on. You carry it like a second tunic. You wear it. You forget you're wearing it until someone asks why you wince when you bend. Women carry pain too, but theirs is layered deeper. You've watched your neighbor's wife carry water up 4 flights of creaking stairs with an infant on her hip and a bruise under her eye. She never spoke of it. No one asked. One day she limped. The next she didn't. The same with birth. It happens in silence, behind a thin wall, with towels, boiling water, and too much blood. If she survives, she returns to chores. If she doesn't, someone else boils lentils. Your pain doesn't come with glory. You're not a warrior. There's no battlefield to explain the stiffness in your elbow or the throb behind your eye. You did not fight Persians or pirates. You lifted boxes. You squatted wrong. You slept on a lumpy mat near a damp wall. And now your knee clicks when you bow for prayer. There are no remedies. Or rather, there are many, all suspicious. A tea brewed with crushed nettle and donkey hair. An oil rubbed into your joints that smells like hope and onions. A charm worn around the neck. Not to heal, but to confuse the pain into leaving. Sometimes an old woman will spit into your palm and mutter. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you just feel wet and insulted. You reach for your shoulder. You press a knuckle into the knot. You groan. Quietly. You wouldn't want anyone to think you're soft. Soft people don't last. Soft people get stepped on like figs in the bazaar. So you keep walking. The pain is still there. Is always there. But so are you. And that counts for something. Not much, but something. Eventually, the pain becomes more than a background hum. It moves to the front of the stage. It starts speaking in full sentences. Your shoulder throbs in rhythm with your pulse. Your lower back mutters dark prophecies with every step. Your head pounds like a street drummer with something to prove. You try to ignore it. For a day. For 3. On the 5th, you wake up and cannot lift your left arm above your chest, and your mouth tastes like iron and mold. You give in. You seek help, but there are no clinics, no appointments, no waiting rooms with chairs and soft lighting. There is no state-sponsored medicine. You're not a soldier. You're not a scribe. You're not rich. You're a man who works with his hands, and one of them no longer works. You ask around. A neighbor gestures vaguely toward the car side and says, "There's a man." That's all you get. So you go looking for the man. The healer's stall is wedged between a fruit vendor and a man selling buckets. It doesn't look like a place of health. It looks like a storage room that gave up. Dried herbs hang from a beam. A cat sleeps on a stack of folded blankets that are either for wrapping wounds or wrapping the dying. You're not sure. A tray of bones sits on a crate. Real bones. Human, probably. A rusty blade leans beside them. The man himself is hunched, bearded, and wearing a robe so stained it has become a new color. His eyes are sharp. Too sharp. The kind of sharp that makes you instinctively hide your wrists. He doesn't greet you. He gestures for you to sit on the stool. It wobbles. Your spine screams. You obey. He asks no questions. He pokes. He prods. He sniffs your breath. He mutters something about bile. He opens a jar of something that looks like crushed beetles in vinegar and holds it to your temple. You resist the urge to vomit. He nods sagely, as if he's reached a conclusion, and declares your humors to be imbalanced. Of course they are. They always are. You don't know what humors are, only that whenever they're involved, blood is going to leave your body. Sure enough, he pulls out a blade. Not a surgical knife. A knife. You shake your head. He ignores you. He speaks to your shoulder. Not you. and tells it that it needs to release the heat trapped beneath the skin. Before you can object, he slices. It is quick, shallow, and extremely unwelcome. Blood seeps out, then pours. He catches it in a chipped bowl. You feel lightheaded. He seems pleased. He mutters a blessing over the blood, spits in it, and throws it under the table. You are now half healed and half traumatized. Next comes the ointment, a thick paste made from herbs, goat fat, and something that smells like burnt beans. He smears it on your skin with the delicacy of a man applying plaster to a wall. It burns. It burns with the heat of 7 sons and 3 personal regrets. You cry out. He smiles. Good, he says. That means it's working. Then he ties a cloth around your arm. Then another. Then one across your forehead. He places a talisman in your hand, a bead carved with the word protection and the faint imprint of a fish, and tells you to sleep with it under your tongue. You nod. You will not do that. He asks for coin. 2 of them. You balk. You offer 1. He frowns. You pretend to leave. He takes it. You both know this is theater. On your way out, he hands you a small cloth bag filled with herbs and hair. Boil this, he says, and drink the steam. You nod again. You're never boiling that. You're going home to lie down and question every decision that led to this moment. But here's the strange part. The shoulder feels better. Not good, not strong, but not screaming. Maybe it's the bloodletting. Maybe it's the fear. Maybe it's placebo or superstition or the kind of low-grade magic that only works when you've lost the will to argue. You walk slower now because of the dizziness, because of the bandage, because you've just handed your last coin to a man who keeps finger bones in a teacup. You return home not cured, but stabilized. You lie down on your mat, close your eyes, and dream of nothing. Not because you are healed, but because your body has decided to shut down and file a complaint with the divine. In the morning, the pain will return. It always does, but now it has competition. The sting of the cut, the itch of the ointment, the smell of goat in your pillow. Medicine in the Ottoman Empire is not about making you well. It is about making you well enough to keep working. And that, tragically, is just enough. By the time you stagger back to the konak, the sun is slipping sideways behind the rooftops, painting the wood and stone in a warm gold that does nothing to soften the fact that you feel like a bag of broken sticks wrapped in sweat. The sky is bruising into purple. The call to prayer is rising again. Not the hopeful song of morning, but the long, low, mournful melody that tells you the day is over whether you're ready or not. You're not, but the city doesn't care. You open the door, and the smell hits you before your foot crosses the threshold. Boiled lentils, not the fragrant, spice-kissed stew of the imperial kitchen. Not the kind monks write about in gratitude during fasting months. This is the kind of lentils you boil because it was either them or chewing your own sandals. The kind of lentils that gave up on flavor halfway through cooking and now sit there in a dented pot, simmering like regret with steam. You collapse near the low table, a warped plank propped up by 2 overturned crates. It isn't set. It is never set. There are no tablecloths, no embroidered napkins, no polite place settings. There is a bowl. 1. It gets passed around like a burden. There are spoons, 2 of them, fighting a losing war against rust. There is no conversation. Your aunt, or whoever she is, ladles a thick scoop into a chipped bowl and slides it toward you without comment. You nod in place of thanks. She nods back. Her fingers are swollen. She hasn't smiled in 6 weeks. You do not expect her to start now. You look down into your meal. It is a slurry, a color somewhere between beige and despair. There are lentils, certainly. Some rice, maybe. A chunk of turnip floats to the surface, then vanishes again like a ghost reluctant to be seen. There are specks of dried mint on top, scattered with the ceremonial flourish of someone who ran out of options 4 days ago. You lift your spoon. It's warm, That is the kindest thing you can say about it. You take a bite. It is soft, flavorless, filling in a way that wet bread is filling. Your stomach will stop growling, but your soul will remain unconvinced. You chew slowly, not from appreciation but necessity. Hot mush requires careful navigation. You've burned your tongue enough times to learn. The rest of the household gathers without fanfare. Your coughing cousin, a child with one sandal. A man who may or may not be your uncle, but insists on quoting Persian poetry while picking at a blister on his neck. No one speaks, not because there is nothing to say, but because no one has the strength to say it. The only sound is the scrape of spoons, the occasional sigh, and the faint sizzle of something near the brazier that might be food or a fire hazard. There is no meat. There never is. Meat is for weddings, funerals, and bribes. Once a month, maybe you get a scrap of lamb, so small you spend more time looking for it than chewing. Tonight, there's a smear of garlic paste on a crust of bread so hard it could crack teeth. You eat anyway. Teeth grow back, you tell yourself. They do not, but you say it again. Someone offers olives. You take one. It is salty and bitter and tastes like it was fermented in a boot. You swallow it like medicine. You want to ask for another. You don't. There is no dessert. Of course not. Sugar is for the rich, for merchants, for men with turbans large enough to hold pride. If you want sweetness, chew a fig and close your eyes. Or dream. Dreams are free. And sometimes, if you sleep hungry enough, they taste like honey. Someone spills water. No one reacts. Someone burps. It echoes. No one apologizes. This is not a meal. This is fuel. This is survival measured in scoops. Eventually, the pot is empty. The spoons are licked clean. The bowl passed around with fingers, then wiped on cloth that has seen too many evenings. You lean back against the wall. It's damp. You do not care. You're full. Not satisfied, but full. Your aunt begins to clear the pot. The children argue over who gets to lick the last burnt bits from the bottom, the only part with flavor. A neighbor knocks once on the doorframe, steps in without asking, and sits. He is handed a bowl. No questions. No greetings. He eats. You sit beside him in silence. The light fades. No lamps are lit. Oil costs money. Darkness is cheaper. Outside, someone plays a reed flute. Badly. A dog barks in the distance. A man shouts something about taxes. The street begins its long descent into drunkenness and smoke. But here, in this quiet wooden box stacked atop other wooden boxes, the day ends the only way it ever ends, with a full belly and a heavy silence. You pull your coat tighter. You lick your thumb. You close your eyes. Dinner is over, and you're still alive. Barely, but alive. You have eaten. Barely. You have not collapsed. Technically, the night is thick now, not just with darkness, but with sound, the humming murmur of a city that refuses to rest. Constantinople doesn't sleep. It simmers. It wheezes. It scratches itself awake just long enough to light another brazier, shout another curse, or slap another drum. And you, for reasons that even your bones question, decide to go out. Why? Not because you expect joy. Not because you believe there's a place waiting for you with wine and dancing and applause. You go because staying inside means stewing in your own sweat and watching the candle sputter while your neighbor snores like an asthmatic cow. You go because the street may be loud and foul, but at least it doesn't ask you about your plans. The moment you step out, the city breathes on you. Warm, sour breath. You follow the sounds. Somewhere down near the Mayhane district, a tambourine rattles. Someone shouts about a bear. Somewhere else, a woman is singing, low, mournful, in a language older than your grandfather's bones. A man laughs too loud, then chokes. A glass smashes. You step over it. There is no theater as you know it. No stage, no tickets. Just corners. Corners become performances. A cleared patch of dirt behind a bakery hosts two boys juggling knives in shirts that haven't been washed since Ramadan. Their movements are tight, desperate, and practiced in the way that tells you they've been doing this since their teeth came in. They don't smile. The coins dropped at their feet clink without hope. Nearby, a man with lungs like a forge bellows an epic, a tale of war, of sultans and janissaries, of betrayal and blood and divine intervention. He recites it in full Ottoman rhyme, his fingers painting in the air. You understand half the words. Doesn't matter. He could be naming fruits, and you'd still feel the tension rise when the hero draws his sword and calls on Allah. He ends a verse in silence. Everyone claps. Someone hands him bread. He takes it like treasure. Then there are the Karagaz men, the shadow puppeteers. You follow a crowd into a smoky coffee stall, where a white cloth hangs between two oil lamps. Behind it, a man with a voice like broken tiles performs both parts. Karagaz, the crude loudmouth, and Hasavat, the self-important scholar. They argue. They bicker. They throw insults wrapped in parables. Children howl with laughter. Adults smirk in the dark. Someone throws a walnut. It's caught midair. The puppets dance on, casting wriggling shadows like spirits caught in a lamp. You smile, not because it's funny, but because it's something. Something outside your head, outside your pain, outside your debts. And then, the real attraction, the pit. You hear it before you see it. The guttural chant of men who have not smiled without teeth in years. The smell hits next, sweat, dust, and goat fat burning on a spit near the gate. This is not for the polite. This is not a performance. This is blood. The Pelavanler, the oil wrestlers, are circling. Half naked, glistening, muscles carved like marble kissed by misery. They wear leather trousers called kispit and nothing else. Every inch of their bodies is slick with oil. Olive, goat, sometimes bear if the butcher's in a good mood. They rub it into their arms, their chests, their necks, their very souls. This is not to look good. It's to make it impossible to grab. A whistle sounds. They grapple. It is not elegant. It is not clean. It is strength versus strength, legs locked like roots, arms sliding, fists digging into slippery bellies and backs. They grunt like bulls. They slam into the dirt. One goes down. The crowd roars, not in joy, in recognition. In that roar is the echo of every day you hauled bricks, every moment you slipped on a fishbone, every time a man in silk ignored you like air. These fighters are you, except stronger, except noticed. The winner throws a fist in the air. Coins fly. Someone slaps a drum. A child screams. A woman faints or maybe sleeps. The loser lies still, for a second too long, then rises, his face blank, not defeated, just finished. For now, you walk away, heart thudding, not from excitement, from something deeper. A reminder that even the strongest fall, that even the greased, the trained, the cheered can land face first in the mud and be forgotten before the oil dries. On your way back, you pass the Mayhane. Smoke curls from its open door. Inside, men drink raki like it's medicine. Laughter here is loud, but it's not happy. It's desperate. Men slapping backs too hard. Someone singing a folk song off key. Someone else telling a joke about the vizier's wife that could get him hanged if anyone sober heard it. You think about going in. You don't. You keep walking, past the vendors cleaning up, past the cats licking fish bones, past the man asleep with his back to a wall and a hand on his coin pouch. The night is cooling now. You feel in your joints, in your cuticles, in the scar behind your knee. This was entertainment. This was your feast. And what a feast it was. Bone, oil, dirt, shadows, noise, and one slightly overcooked fig. You reach your door. You open it. You do not speak. There is nothing to say. You've already seen it all. You're not a criminal. Not officially. Not yet. But in the Ottoman Empire, that's never the point. Guilt is a matter of interpretation. Law is a matter of proximity. And justice, well, justice is what happens to other people. Richer people, sharper people, people with cousins in the Janissary barracks, and friends in turbans too clean to trust. It starts with a shout. You're at the corner of the bread market, minding your own business, chewing on a crust so hard it might be older than the wall you're leaning against. A man stumbles. He yells. Something breaks. A crate of ceramic bowls explodes beside you like a dozen tiny thunderclaps. The merchant shrieks, and everyone turns toward you. Because you were there. Because you have no alibi. Because someone must be to blame, and you are shaped like blame. The Sipahi, cavalryman, part-time enforcer, full-time menace, steps forward. His uniform is dusty, but his boots are sharp. He smells like sweat and old pride. He asks no questions. He grabs your wrist, holds it high, and waits for the crowd to hiss or cheer. You protest. Quietly. You know better than to yell. Yelling is guilt. Loudness is defiance. You're not allowed to be defiant. You are marched through alleys that reek of fish brine and stale urine. Past women who glance and look away. Past men who pretend not to see. The Cuddy-S house rises at the end of the street, pale stone and ironwood doors, with windows that never seem to blink. You have never been inside. You didn't plan to visit today. The courtyard is silent. A boy fans flies from a potted tree with a bundle of peacock feathers. A clerk sits beside a ledger the size of a goat. He does not look up. You are told to wait. You do. When the Cuddy finally arrives, he does not walk. He glides. Tall, wrapped in silks, beard trimmed with architectural precision. He does not sit. He descends. Onto cushions. Onto power. Onto the invisible pyramid that has your forehead pressed to the ground, whether you like it or not. The accusations are read. You broke a merchant's wares. You frightened a child. You cursed a god. That last one wasn't even the market, but someone insists you did it 2 weeks ago while spitting in the gutter. You deny it, gently, with your hands folded and your spine bent. You are not here to be innocent. You are here to be small. Witnesses are summoned. The merchant, red in the face, dramatic, nearly poetic in his fury. A boy who wasn't there, but whose uncle owes the merchant 3 coins, and therefore is suddenly very sure he saw you throw the crate on purpose. A neighbor who just doesn't like your face. No one asks if you have witnesses. Of course not. Your friends don't visit court. Your neighbors keep their heads down. Your family has other problems, like roofs and rats and rations. The Cuddy listens. He strokes his beard. He quotes the Quran. He quotes a Persian poet. He mutters something about order, about respect, about the weight of tradition. He looks at you, and then he delivers your sentence. Not prison. There's no room for that. Not a fine. You have nothing to pay. Your punishment is simple, old-fashioned, immediate. 5 lashes, delivered publicly, to remind you and everyone else that law here is not about restoration. It is about rhythm, like the slap of sandals on hot stone, like the swing of a whip, like the chant of soldiers training in the dust. You are dragged to the post. Your shirt is pulled down. Your breath vanishes somewhere behind your ribs. A man steps forward. His job is not to hate you. It is to hurt you. He does it well. The whip sings. Once. Twice. You count silently, not because it helps, but because it's the only power left to you. At 5, you do not cry out. Not because you are strong, because your throat has closed. They let you go. Not with kindness, with disinterest. You're done being useful as an example. You stumble back through the city. No one makes way. No one offers water. A cat hisses at your leg. A woman selling figs pretends not to see the blood soaking your waistband. You reach the konak and collapse near the threshold. Someone looks at you. Someone else says nothing. You lie on your side. You shake silently, not from pain, from knowing. This was not the worst that could happen. This was ordinary, and that's what terrifies you. In the Ottoman Empire, justice wears a turban, but speaks with a stick. You can barely walk. Every step rubs salt into your back, even though no one salted you. That luxury is for meat. The welts are swelling like a second spine. You move through the alley not like a man, but like a rumor, bent, unnoticed, avoided. You smell like old sweat and fresh humiliation. The easin begins, the call to prayer, and you flinch like it's a whip. It's not, of course. It's a song, but it comes from above, and everything from above has hurt you lately. Still, you stop, because you have to. Everyone does. The city breathes and turns. Men pause their shouting, vendors bow their heads, cats slink under carts. The echo climbs the minarets like a silver rope. 5 times a day, the empire calls itself back to attention. Not because it remembers God, but because it wants God to remember it. You join the others in the courtyard outside the mesjid, a small neighborhood mosque, no more elegant than a storage barn, with cracked tiles and a door that creaks like it's been repenting for centuries. You wash your hands, your feet, the back of your neck. The water is cold and tastes of tin. You rinse your mouth. You do not look in the mirror. There isn't one. Inside, it is dim, quiet. The floor is layered in old mats, their threads faded and patched with careful fingers. You line up. You bow. You press your forehead to the ground. And for a moment, just the smallest sliver of time, you are nothing. Not poor, not hurt, not guilty, not even you. But the prayer ends, and you are still you. Outside, a man with a beard like braided smoke is selling muska. Amulets folded in waxcloth, each one containing a verse, a protection, a plea. One for fever, one for childbirth, one for broken luck, one for thieves. He looks at your face, hollow-eyed, lips cracked, soul bleeding through your shirt, and offers one for mercy. You ask the price. He names a number that feels like a joke. You nod anyway. You give him a button instead of a coin. He doesn't blink. He slides it into his pouch. What matters is the exchange, not the value. You wear the amulet around your neck. You feel nothing. It swings as you walk, ticking against your chest like a quiet accusation. Religion here is not something you choose. It is everywhere, always. Painted on walls, carved into fountains, woven into cloth, written into contracts. There are prayers before you open your shop. Prayers when you need dough. Prayers when you see lightning, stub your toe, bury your brother. The air is thick with invocations. Even curses begin with the name of God. You visit the shrine of a veli, a holy man buried beneath a tree older than most languages. People leave rags tied to the branches, coins at the threshold, bread, hair, tears. You leave a pebble. You whisper nothing, and yet still nothing happens. The city tells you religion is comfort, but comfort is for the rich. They attend the cami on Fridays with fresh robes, perfumed beards, sandals that do not squeak. Their prayers are poetic, performed, projected. You've seen men cry in front of a judge, then walk straight to the mosque and shout their piety like a rooster. Your faith is not loud. It is not scholarly. It is not respected. Your faith is a quiet hand on your chest in the dark, asking no one in particular to please, just once let you sleep through the night. You know men who follow other paths, Sufis who whirl until their minds melt into stars, dervishes who beg in riddles and smell of ash and roses. You envy them, not because they are right, because they seem less tired. Sometimes you pass a Christian quarter. You hear bells, foreign words, see old women drawing crosses in the air. You do not mock them. You do not envy them. You just wonder if their God listens better. Once you asked your uncle if the prayers really worked. He said, of course. If they didn't, imagine how much worse it would be. You didn't ask again. You sleep with the muska under your shirt. You dream of nothing. You wake up sore, hungry, alive, and pray again, not because you believe, because you need something to answer, even if it doesn't. You wake up sore, not from sleep. Sleep would imply rest. No, you wake up because the cat walked across your face, or someone dropped a pot 2 floors up, or a child screamed 3 feet from your ear. Whatever the reason, you're awake. And your first thought isn't about food or water. It's about position. Your position. In this empire, everyone has one. Fixed, named, labeled. Your tunic, your accent, your sandals. They all tell on you before you open your mouth. You are alt tabaka, bottom layer. Not enslaved, not quite desperate, but too poor to matter and too visible to disappear. You fetch. You carry. You nod when spoken to and hope the person speaking isn't drunk, angry, or bored enough to ruin your day. But today, something stirs in your ribs. Not ambition. That's too strong a word. Let's call it irritation with gravity. You're tired of bowing, of waiting, of licking dried lentil from a communal spoon. So you make a decision. Dangerous, foolish, and vaguely hopeful. You're going to try to climb. It starts small. You wash your face twice. You scrape the dirt from under your nails. You borrow, steal, a belt that doesn't belong to you and tighten it around your waist like a declaration. You fold your one clean shirt, so the tear is in the back. Then you walk to the market with a purpose. You're going to speak to a man with money. He's not a pasa. He's not a scholar. He's a merchant. Silk, spice, dyes. He owns 3 stalls and a cousin in Adirna who once served at court. He's not rich enough to ignore you, but just rich enough to ruin you. Perfect. You stand by his cart until he notices. He does. Eventually, his eyes sweep over you like a bored painter choosing which color to ignore. Yes, you offer your back, your arms, your loyalty. You offer to lift, to count, to clean, to guard his goods while he pisses. You don't say the word patron, but you both hear it. He doesn't say no. He doesn't say yes either. He hands you a bundle of fabric, points to a destination, names a time, and walks away. You run. Fussed. Too fast. You nearly trip twice. The fabric smells like wealth. Not good, exactly, but rich. Like spices sealed in jars and never opened. You deliver it. You say nothing. The woman at the door says less. You return. The merchant nods. You do this again and again. By sunset, your shirt is soaked. Your calves are singing hymns of protest, and your back is forming a new philosophy. But when the merchant hands you 2 coins, real coins, and says, tomorrow, same time, something tightens in your chest. Not pain, something older, something like pride if you squint. That night, you eat bread that wasn't free. You drink water that didn't come from a line. You buy a dried figure. You don't even eat it. You save it. Like a rich man. You stare at it like it might teach you something. The next day, it continues. The merchant starts asking your opinion. Never directly, never kindly, but still. Which dye is stronger? Which boy stole from my cart last week? Which fabric feels too thin? You answer. Carefully. He listens. Briefly. You're still nothing. But now you're nothing with a function. And in this empire, that's everything. Soon, you carry more. You speak more. You watch others bow to him. And you stand behind him like a shadow with feet. You're not paid more. You're not praised. But your name is remembered. And when he introduces you to another merchant, this one with a thicker beard and thicker rings, he uses the word, reliable. That word, that golden word. It isn't power, but it's a key, and keys are rare. You begin to think, maybe, just maybe, you can rise. You won't be a pasa. You won't own a bathhouse, but maybe a stall, maybe a helper. Maybe one day, someone else will carry your fabric. Then your neighbor is arrested. No reason. Wrong crowd. Wrong accent. He vanishes. You ask around. No one answers. You see the merchant the next morning. He says, "Don't ask questions." You nod. You keep climbing. Because even the olive ladder, slick and narrow and surrounded by knives, is better than staying in the pit. And because in this empire, falling is certain. The only choice you get is how high you were before it happens. The sun finally falls behind the spires, and for a moment the sky above Istanbul glows like old copper. Bruised, tarnished, beautiful in that distant way suffering often is. The call to prayer echoes, softer now, a lullaby meant to settle the faithful into homes, into courtyards, into silence. But you're not inside. You're still out. And you know what that means. Night in the Ottoman capital is not a quiet velvet curtain. It is a living thing, breathing, shifting, watching. A jackal with 1,000 eyes. It doesn't matter that the moon is full or that your path is familiar. The night changes everything. It swallows corners. It stretches alleys. It sharpens sounds. It makes your name shorter and your shadow longer. You light no lantern. You cannot afford oil. You walk blind by memory and instinct and prayer. The stones are uneven. The gutters are slick. Somewhere nearby, a woman laughs. Not a joyful sound. A laugh meant to make someone flinch. Two men argue in low tones just around the corner. A baby wails in a window above, ignored or forgotten. The air tastes different now. Smoke, yes, but also metal and sweat and fear. You pass a tavern, its door hanging open like a drunk's mouth. Inside, shouting, coughing, glass breaking, someone playing a saz like it owes him money. A man is thrown out into the street. He lands hard, doesn't get up. No one moves to help. You don't stop, because you've learned. Night belongs to no one. Not to the cuddy, not to the janissary, not to the scribe who speaks 5 languages but forgets his own address after sunset. It belongs to whoever decides to take it. And if you're not taking it, you are prey. The Beksi, the night watchmen, are around somewhere. You've seen them before. Lean, cold-eyed men with sticks and opinions. They are not here to protect you. They are here to keep order. And sometimes order means turning their heads while someone is robbed, beaten, dragged behind a wall for something as petty as a clean pair of boots. If they catch you without reason, without destination, without name, they'll ask questions, but not with words, with their sticks. One crack to the ribs to make you respectful, another to the knee to keep you still, a third if they're bored. You try not to be interesting. You keep walking. The cats own the walls now. Hundreds of them. Watching. Hissing. Sliding between rooftops like smoke with claws. They fight over garbage. Over scraps. Over nothing. You understand them. The dogs own the streets. Half wild. Scarred. Sleepy but dangerous. Packs drift like clouds of muscle and teeth. You don't run. You never run. You walk slowly. Eyes down. Body loose. You become another shadow among shadows. You pass the corpse of a rat, half crushed, still twitching. You pass a woman pacing with a jug, barefoot, muttering to herself. You pass a beggar curled under an awning, lips blue, eyes wide open. You don't check if he's alive. You don't want to know. Someone calls out, "Hey." You don't look. You don't respond. It's not your name. You tell yourself that. You hope it's true. The voice doesn't repeat, but your spine will buzz for hours. And then, laughter. A group of boys, teenagers maybe, drunk on stolen wine and night. One of them carries a stick. One wears a belt that looks too clean to be his. They shove each other. They shout lines from play. They kick a broken cart and cheer when it falls apart. They see you. You keep walking. They don't follow. This time, you exhale through your nose. You don't head straight home. You take the long way. Not because you want to, because you need to check. Is anyone behind you? Are the boys still laughing? Is the beggar still watching? Are the watchmen circling back? You step into the threshold of your konak, only when you're sure. Inside, quiet. Not peace. Just silence. A cousin snores. A child talks in her sleep. The rafters creak. You lock the door with a wedge of wood. It will not stop anyone who truly wants to come in, but it helps your nerves. You lie down. You stare into the dark. You listen. A cart rolls by, wheels clicking like distant bones. Somewhere far off, a woman sings. A man coughs. Someone is whispering in the room below. You pull the blanket over your face. You can't sleep, but you try to pretend. Because the night is not over. It never is. Not until the light comes. Not until you survive. Again, you survived. Not gloriously. Not cleanly. Not with songs or honor or the kind of triumph you'd ever want to write down. But you did. Your feet touched every cursed cobblestone. Your lungs breathed every foul draft of the city's breath. And your back still holds the memory of the whip's last syllable. You are still here. And in this empire, that counts for everything. The light creeps through the slats in the wall like a thief too polite to knock. A rooster crows with the desperation of something trying to prove it matters. Pots clatter in the distance. Someone has already started boiling yesterday's tea leaves for a second round. You open your eyes. Everything hurts. Your back is fire. Your knees are gravel. Your stomach is a flat drum with nothing left to play. Your arms ache from lifting. Your lungs feel dusty, and your mouth is dry as chalk. You have slept in 4-hour bursts broken by coughs, footsteps, and dreams you can't remember except for the part where you kept falling. You wish it were a metaphor. It's not, but the day has no pity. It begins whether you're ready or not. You sit up slowly, as if the air itself might shatter you if you move too quickly. You reach for your tunic, the one with the least number of holes. Your fingers are stiff. Your toenails dig into the wood. You try to remember how many days it's been since the figure. You can't. You try to remember what hope felt like. You almost can. Outside, the city is already running. Vendors are screaming prices for things that don't deserve voices. Onions with mold, bread like rocks, jars of pickled regrets. A donkey pisses in the middle of the street, and no one even blinks. A woman dumps her chamber pot with a practice flick. A child runs barefoot through a puddle you hope is only water. You know what's ahead. You know the stairs will creak, that the boy 3 doors down will bump you on purpose, that your boss will shout, your lunch will be lentils again, and the air will taste like charcoal and meat you can't afford. You know someone will die today, a stranger, a neighbor, a goat, and the city will move on like it didn't notice. You know your arms will lift until they can't, your back will bend until it screams, and your hands will crack open just wide enough for the dust to get in. But here's the strangest part. You go anyway. You put on your shoes. You open the door. You step outside. Because the empire doesn't wait. It doesn't weep for you. It doesn't ask what you dreamed of, or what you lost, or who you might have been if you were born with better sandals and a richer uncle. It just continues. Stone by stone. Coin by coin. Grain sack by grain sack. And you, poor, half-broken, full of quiet fury and silent bargains. You are part of it, whether you ask to be or not. And maybe that's the real trick. Not survival, not rising, not winning, just being here. One more day, one more breath, one more step across the same cursed stones with the same tired bones and the same quiet prayer in your chest that sound a lot like, let this not be the day I fall. You did it. You spent one day in the Ottoman Empire. And to be honest, you couldn't have taken the second one. But no one asked you about it. Clay Queen, the power of a Sumerian priestess. You're not born in glory. You are born in mud. You're not born under starlight, but beneath smoke, temple smoke, thick and bitter, curling into the rafters like a ghost-denied burial. You enter the world in the back chamber of the temple of Ninhursag, goddess of wounds and soil, where birth is not miracle, but bureaucracy. Your mother is a priestess, not a high one, not even respected. She chants the night songs, scrapes old incense from copper bowls, and buries miscarried fetuses in clay jars beneath the floor. She does not name you for 3 days. That is the law. The weak do not earn names until they prove they intend to stay. You stay. Your first bed is a mat made of woven reeds, damp with river stink. Your lullabies are muttered prayers, half in Sumerian, half in Akkadian, all in exhaustion. The other children call you mudborn because you have never left the temple. You don't attend school with the sons of merchants or scribes. You learn letters by copying incantations with a stick into dirt. You memorize hymns before you can pronounce your own name. The gods are your only language, and they do not listen. You grow up in shadow, not noble shadow, not the kind that drapes kings in mystery, but the thick, oily shadow of men who eat first and speak last. The high priest wears robes too heavy for the weather and rings on each finger. His prayers are memorized, empty, and full of hunger. You watch him collect grain from widows during the famine. You watch him accept cattle from a farmer who has no sandals. You watch him declare, "Is the will of Enlil." You do not believe him. When you're 9, you are punished for speaking during ritual. You said the gods are deaf. You are lashed with a leather strip made from temple oxhide and locked in a room where broken tablets are ground into new clay. You are told to pray. You do, but not to them. Not anymore. You pray to the woman you will become. She does not weep. She does not kneel. She does not wait to be chosen. You do not ask her name because you know she will have many. At 12, they allow you to serve at the outer altar. You wear white linen. You speak the hymns in perfect cadence. You carry bowls of barley water to the elders. You clean blood from sacrificial knives. You keep your eyes low, but your ears wide. You hear women whisper. They complain of the grain tax, of the priest guards, of how the sacred market now charges to enter. They speak of miscarriages, of bad water, of prayers gone unanswered. They think no one listens. But you do. At 14, you tell them the truth. You stand outside the temple gates, where trade carts groan and the air stinks of fish and ambition. You speak of what you've seen, of grain hoarded in sacred storerooms, of laws bent to the weight of gold, of men fat with blessings they never earned. You do not shout. You do not weep. You recite, as if reading a tablet, the gods themselves etched into your bones. People listen, and then the priests hear. They do not debate you. They do not scold. They do not argue scripture. They drag you by your hair into the same clay-walled room where you once prayed as a child. This time there is no lamp, no mat, no air. You stay there for 2 nights. You're given only water. On the 3rd day, a priestess slides in a bowl of barley porridge and a note pressed into clay. It is not a pardon. It is a question. Will you repent? You answer nothing. You press your fingers into the bowl, shape the mush into the sign for truth. They leave you alone for 2 more days. On the 6th morning, the door creaks. You are pulled out, blinking into the sun, thinner than you were but straighter. You no longer belong to them. You are clay, but now you have been fired. You do not return to the temple as a servant. You return like thunder on dry earth. You do not request permission to speak, you claim it. Your voice is hoarse from silence, but each word lands like a fist of stone on sacred marble. You do not raise your tone. You don't need to. The way you speak, it sounds like the clay itself is speaking through you. And clay is tired of being stepped on. You say Enlil never demanded grain from widows. That Inanna never asked for silver from the hands of starving mothers. That sacrifices taken from the poor do not rise to heaven. They rot in the bellies of the priests. You speak in the square, outside the grain vault where women are charged double for half a measure. You speak near the market stalls where prices shift by whim and bribery. You speak during morning rituals, And when the incense rises, heads no longer turn toward the flame. They turn toward you. At first, the priests laugh. Then, they command people not to listen. Then, they begin to whisper behind chamber doors how to silence you, how to discredit you, how to break the spell you've cast. But it's too late. You no longer belong to the temple. You belong to the streets, to the women selling fish with cracked hands, to the children who play beside dry wells, to the old men who remember when prayers still meant hope, not tax. They call you a Mesha, not your birth name, but a new one whispered like protection. It means born of the earth. It means made of truth. It means not theirs. The temple walls grow colder. The halls echo with unease. For the first time in a generation, the people believe not in a god carved of lapis lazuli, but in a girl shaped of dust. The high priest summons you, not to strike you, not yet, not to excommunicate you. They know better, but to offer the oldest coin in Sumer, a position, a seat within the temple council, a ceremonial roll, white linen, incense, silence. You decline. You say, I already have a position. It's called standing. They smile like men who've already ordered your death. You smile back like a woman who's already buried them in her dreams. You begin rewriting law, not with reeds stylus on clay, but with voice, repetition, and the ears of the city. You declare that debt should not pass from mother to child, that if a woman is widowed during drought, she shall not be taxed, that the gods require justice more than goats. You do not inscribe these decrees. You speak them aloud, again and again, until market women recite them like hymns, until children carve them in dust beside the canals, until even the priests cannot walk the streets without hearing their own false laws disintegrate under your breath. You speak, so they begin calling your voice a weapon. And perhaps it is. One day, the grain collectors come to the temple granary and find the doors sealed. The guards refuse to open them. When asked who gave the order, they simply say she did. You're not queen. You wear no crown. But the city begins to bow when you pass, not from fear, but gravity. Clay recognizes its own. There is no coronation, no crown of lapis, no procession of scribes, no dove released into the sky. There is only mourning, and you walking through the grain market, and the people stepping aside, not out of fear, but out of breath. The priests no longer leave the temple. When they do, it's with guards. They clutch their tablets like shields, muttering about omens and disorder. But omens are no longer theirs to read. The gods, it seems, have chosen a different scribe. You speak law, and it spreads not through decree, but through need. Women from nearby cities arrive barefoot, asking for audience. You have no throne, so you sit with them in the dust. They tell you of husbands taken for debts, sons beaten for bread, curses bought and sold like barley. You listen, you rewrite, you send messages back with them, not on clay, but in memory. You tell them, you are not property, you are not silence, you are not less. Some call it treason, others call it prophecy. Children begin to play a new game, not priest and supplicant, but a Mesha and the liars. In it, they overturn stools, steal fake tablets, and shout, no more. You never told them to do this. But the city listens with its whole body now. And the gods? The gods stay quiet, which in Sumer is the closest thing to agreement. They come for you at night, not openly, not with a trial or proclamation. That would make you real. Instead, they send men with knives, wrapped in temple silk, paid in silver that smells like dust and rot. But you're not asleep. You are never asleep. You hear them before they reach your door, because the city warns you. A boy with a broken sandal runs barefoot from the ziggurat steps to your threshold, whispering, they're coming. So when the assassins arrive, they find not silence, but 20 women waiting with millstones, brooms, kitchen knives, and rage. None of them die. But 3 men vanish into the canals that night, and their sandals are fished out at dawn by fishermen who say nothing, only nod. The priests do not speak of it, but they do not send more men. Not yet. Instead, they send scribes to the palace, to the lull, the king of the city, who has watched you with growing unease. He rules with armies. You rule with bread. He collects taxes. You forgive debts. He demands titles. You speak truth without one. He summons you. The palace is quieter than you imagined. Grand but stale. Its opulence tastes of distance. Here, the floors are polished, but the walls are empty. He asks you, what do you want? And you say the one thing no one expects. Less. Fewer taxes. Fewer lies. Fewer names carved into stone by those who never walked the street. He blinks as if struck. Then he laughs. And then he listens. You're not granted authority. You absorb it, not by title, not by inheritance, but by inevitability. Like rain in the flood season, like heat in a month of ghosts. The king does not remove you. He cannot. To banish you now would be to banish the voice of the market, the song in the baker's alley, the whisper in every house that once feared silence more than shadow. So he compromises. He gives you jurisdiction, unofficial, unwritten, a courtyard beside the temple, a canopy of woven rushes, a stool, and a line of people that coils like the Tigris itself. They come not for blessings, not for incense. They come for judgment, and you give it. You listen to disputes about broken oxen and stolen seed, about false debts and wandering husbands. You do not check scrolls. You do not consult omens. You look into the eyes of those who speak, and you ask the only question that matters. Who profits from your pain? That becomes your measure. That becomes your truth. The temple scribes grow nervous. They whisper that you undermine tradition, that you mock the gods by refusing to consult the stars. But you know, the stars never fed the hungry. The gods never carried water, and no priest ever understood justice like a mother with empty hands. One day, a man brings a beaten boy before you. The child had stolen bread. The man demands restitution. You give it. You hand the man a full loaf, and you say, now you have what he took. Go. And to the boy you say, come back tomorrow. I will teach you how to bake. From that day forward, children follow you. And from that day forward, the temple begins to panic. The city begins to shift. Not with trumpets, not with banners, with small things. Prices drop in the grain stalls without a word from the palace. Guards begin to nod to women who speak. Men stop striking their wives in public, not because of law, but because they fear your name whispered like a curse behind market baskets. You never asked for worship, but the people begin to offer it anyway. They leave offerings at your door, flatbread still warm, sprigs of date palm, small figurines shaped in your likeness from clay and ash. A woman carves your face into a tablet and leaves it in the shrine to Inanna. The priests find it and grind it to dust. The next day, 10 more tablets appear. You are not a goddess. You are worse. You are real. You walk through the city barefoot, not in humility, but in warning. You remind them that you came from mud, that you were not chosen, that you were made by hunger, by injustice, by the indifference of temples. And the people believe you more than they believe the stars. You begin to dream strange dreams. In them, the gods do not sit on thrones, but walk through your streets barefoot. They ask you for advice. They bring you broken laws and ask how to fix them. They eat your bread. One of them, perhaps Enki, perhaps some god without name, whispers, you are what we should have been. You wake in sweat, but unafraid, because you have realized something. You no longer serve the divine. You serve the city, and the city has a longer memory than heaven. You're not called queen. No one dares. But when people speak of you, they use a different word now. Pillar. Something that holds the city upright. something too heavy to move and too necessary to fall. You sit in council, though no seed is offered. You are consulted before decisions are made, not because the king demands it, but because the people do. The merchants ask you before raising prices. The canal engineers wait for your approval before diverting water. Even the scribes, once smug in their ink-stained robes, now bring tablets for you to review. You don't read them all. You don't need to. You read them, the men behind the stylus. Their eyes tell you more than the cuneiform ever could. You do not raise armies. You raise presence. You walk the streets, not with guards, but with bakers, with midwives, with children carrying baskets of reeds. You are protected not by bronze, but by affection, the most dangerous armor of all. When the rains come late one year, and the barley fails in the southern fields, people fear famine. The temple demands sacrifices. You demand distribution. The palace resists until the people gather outside with empty bowls, chanting your name. Grain flows. The priests call it blasphemy. You call it lunch. You do not abolish the gods. You simply make them irrelevant. And that, more than anything, terrifies the temple. Because for the first time in centuries, the city no longer bends toward heaven. It bends toward you. The temple retaliates. Not with knives this time, too crude. Not with curses, too obvious. They send scribes, men with clean fingernails and dusty eyes. They come with tablets older than your grandmother, etched with laws from kings long buried. They say your rulings contradict tradition, that your decrees are unlawful, that you're no judge. You let them speak. You let them read. You let them quote kings who own nothing but time. And then, when they finish, you stand before the crowd and raise your hand, not in defiance, but in memory. You say, "Show me the clay these laws were written on. Is it softer than the hands of the mother who begged me for bread? Does it hold more weight than a child's hunger? Is it older than pain? If not, then it is not older than truth." The crowd does not cheer. They nod, solemn, slow, like something ancient has shifted inside them. That evening, a new word appears scratched into the wall outside the granary. Emesha is law. It is not a title. It is a fact. And from that moment on, people stop asking what is allowed. They begin asking what is just. Even merchants, those who once spat at beggars, begin to weigh their scales twice. Farmers leave extra baskets by the road. Not from fear, not from order, but because they've seen what the city looks like when it breathes like a body again. You did not mean to change everything, but you did. Because clay, when shaped by fire, does not return to mud. One morning, the canopy collapses. Wind, sharp and sudden, tears through the temple square. The woven roof above your court shreds like parchment in rain. The priests whisper that it is an omen, that the gods have revoked your favor, that your justice is unshielded. You agree, and you never rebuild it. From that day forward, you judge in the open air. No kalims, no sados, no roof to trap heat or hide corruption. The sun bears down on all who speak. Liars sweat, the guilty squint. Truth gleams like polished copper. You sit beneath the sky with your staff, not a scepter, not a symbol, just a branch you picked from the banks of the Tigris. People begin to carry their own stools, sit in rings around you, listen in silence. They do not ask the temple for permission. They ask you. When a wealthy landowner accuses a servant of theft, you ask how many nights the servant went unfed. When a priest denounces a girl for dancing in the shrine, you ask what the gods gain by shame. When a man blames his wife for infertility, you ask how many children he's fed who weren't his. You do not punish. You reveal. You peel back layers of ritual, wealth, and decorum until the core of things shines. Either cruelty or compassion. The city learns not to lie to you, because when you speak, it feels like clay cracking in the sun, irreversible, loud, and honest. You're not crowned, but your rulings echo louder than any king's decree. And when people say she judged me, it is not a complaint. It is a memory. One morning, the canopy collapses. Wind, sharp and sudden, tears through the temple square. The woven roof above your court shreds like parchment in rain. The priests whisper that it is an omen, that the gods have revoked your favor, that your justice is unshielded. You agree, and you never rebuild it. From that day forward, you judge in the open air. No calims, no sados, no roof to trap heat or hide corruption. The sun bears down on all who speak. Liars sweat, the guilty squint. Truth gleams like polished copper. You sit beneath the sky with your staff, not a scepter, not a symbol, just a branch you pick from the banks of the Tigris. People begin to carry their own stools, sit in rings around you, listen in silence. They do not ask the temple for permission. They ask you. When a wealthy landowner accuses a servant of theft, you ask how many nights the servant went unfed. When a priest denounces a girl for dancing in a shrine, you ask what the gods gain by shame. When a man blames his wife for infertility, you ask how many children he's fed who weren't his. You do not punish. You reveal. You peel back layers of ritual, wealth, and decorum until the core of things shines. Either cruelty or compassion. The city learns not to lie to you, because when you speak, it feels like clay cracking in the sun, irreversible, loud, and honest. You're not crowned, but your rulings echo louder than any king's decree. And when people say she judged me, it is not a complaint. It is a memory. It happens during the new moon festival. The priests summon you, not with blades, not with threats, but with ritual. They invite you to the high temple to offer incense before the statue of Inanna, goddess of love, war, and power. You accept. The city watches as you climb the ziggurat steps, barefoot, as always, your robe the color of wet earth. The priests expect you to kneel, to offer perfumed oil, to recite the sacred lines. You do none of that. You approach the statue. You stare into its lapis eyes. And then you speak. Not a hymn, not a plea, a question. Where were you when the child bled in the street? Where were you when the widow starved while your altar overflowed? What good is a goddess who listens only to gold? The room freezes. The head priest's hand twitches. The guards shift. The incense guttered in the brazier chokes the air. You do not flinch, because you know the truth. Gods carve a stone, do not hunger. They do not grieve. They do not change. But the people do. You turn your back on the statue. And the temple, for the first time in generations, does not collapse. Lightning does not strike. The river does not rise. The sky does not fall. And the people below, watching, waiting, exhale. The next day, someone leaves a small idol at your door. Not of Inanna, of you, shaped in mud, painted with ochre, eyes made of broken shell. You do not weep. You place it on your shelf beside the flat stones and oil jars. You do not pray to it, but when you pass it, you nod, because the gods no longer sit on thrones. They walk the streets. In your shape, the king falls ill, not struck by blade or poison, but by age, slow, soft, inescapable. His sons circle like vultures, already dividing the throne among themselves. Each seeks your favor. Each offers coin, flattery, alliance. You speak to none of them. You speak to the city. With no formal decree, no seal pressed into clay, you begin to govern. You regulate grain weights in the market. You halt a planned conscription of boys from the outer districts. You order a census, not of property, but of hunger. No army enforces this. No guard announces it. And yet it happens, because people follow what they trust. You walk the canals, inspecting irrigation ditches, asking farmers what they need. You meet with potters, with midwives, with scribes paid too little to lie. In 1 week, you stop 3 disputes from turning to blood. In 1 month, you restore trade to a village abandoned by priests. In 1 season, the city begins to dream of itself as more than walls and wealth. It begins to dream as you do. You dream of granaries that do not lock, of schools that teach girls, of courts where truth is not afraid to sit beside poverty. Sometimes in those dreams, you see yourself older, gray-haired, still barefoot, still listening. And sometimes you see the city without you, but it still stands, still breathes, still remembers, because your rule was never carved in stone. It was carried in hands, in mud, in breath. You do not need the king to die for the city to belong to you. It already does. The king dies, not with thunder, not with riot. He simply exhales one final time, and the palace shutters are closed. No civil war follows, no scramble for power, because by then, everyone already knows who holds the city together. The sons bicker in the palace, but outside, in the real city, the streets remain calm. The grain flows. The prayers continue. And your name moves not through scrolls, but through the mouths of those who once had none. You refuse the throne. You do not sit on golden benches or don a ring of rule. Instead, you return to the square, the same one where years ago you stood in sandals worn thin, voice raw from disuse, heart loud enough to split stone. Now it is filled with faces, young ones, who only know a world where judgment lives beneath the sky. Old ones, who remember the days before you, and whisper that they were darker. You speak one last time, not to command, not to warn, but to give them something permanent. A single line, scratched into clay, not by a scribe, but by your own hand. Justice is not weight measured by kings, but water carried by the smallest hands. You do not sign your name. You press your thumb into the wet clay and leave it to dry in the sun. Years later, they will not find your tomb. They will argue if you're a priestess, queen, heretic, prophet, but they will find a tablet. And they will know someone lived who remembered the sound of hunger, the shape of silence, the weight of a promise kept. And in that knowing, you will live again. Not as a statue, not as a goddess, but as a woman made of dust who ruled without crown and was remembered by the clay. Smoke beneath the pomegranate tree. They say the old gods don't die. They fade, they flinch, they fall into whispers, but they don't die. Not really. In the high valleys of Khorasan, where snow still dusts the peaks long into summer, and wind combs the earth like a cautious lover, those gods lived on, silent but unyielding. And Mazdakad was their last tongue. She was not born in the temple. No silver spoon, no braided pedigree. Her mother bled out on the floor of a goat herder's tent while the wind screamed like it was trying to remember her name. A midwife muttered prayers to Anahita. A pomegranate branch was burned for luck. Mazdakad slipped into the world purple-faced and furious, and the snow outside melted before the fire even touched it. The villagers said the child was touched, not blessed, touched. The kind of child who didn't cry when stung, who stared too long at flames, who always knew when someone was lying. She grew in silence and shadow, half loved and half feared. Old women would slip charms into her hands and avoid her eyes. Old men stopped calling her girl and began calling her child of the old hour. By the time she bled for the first time, the new priest had come. Zoroaster had long since whispered his fire-born revelations through the courts, but now they came with scrolls, taxes, decrees. Fire temples rose where shrines once wept. The empire wanted order, a single flame, one god, clean and clear. And Mazdakad, she was neither clean nor clear. She was dirt and dusk and dreams, and something the Empire couldn't name. She never pledged herself to the new creed. She never spat on the idols. She never burned the old scrolls. Instead, she gathered herbs that grew in moonlight. She healed burns with oil and chant. She whispered to water and read the wind. People came to her hut not for ceremony, but for something older. A mother whose child would not sleep. A soldier who could not forget the blood on his hands. A girl who heard voices in the river. She never asked for coin, only respect, only silence, only that her name not be written. But silence is brittle in times of fire. And by the winter of her 25th year, the new Magi had sent letters. Letters to the provincial court, letters to the capital, letters with seals of flame. The word was always the same: heresy. And in the capital, heresy was not a sin. It was a threat. They called her witch. And in a kingdom trying to forget it once knelt to many gods, that was the same as calling her dangerous. And so began the last storm. Not of swords, not of siege, but of faith. Mazdakad did not hide. Not yet. Not ever. When the court envoys arrived in the village, she met them not in chains, not in rags, but in a red cloak of dyed wool, hair unbound, eyes unreadable. And when they asked her if she believed in one God, she said, "I believe in what answers." And the wind rose behind her. They came folded in flame-colored silk, bound with wax seals pressed by hands that never touched dirt. Letters from the court were not just parchment. They were pronouncements, veiled commands dressed as inquiries. They smelled of cinnamon and ink and fear disguised as order. The first was read aloud by the local satrap, who stumbled over Mazdakad's name like it might bite him. To the woman calling herself healer, he said, spitting the word as if it were poison, "You are summoned to the court of fire in Ctesiphon. Your practices, being without sanction, are subject to imperial examination." She said nothing, just listened, eyes sharp, breath still. When he was finished, she held out her hand. Not for his help, for the letter. He hesitated, then gave it to her. She did not thank him. That night, she fed it to her hearth, one letter among many. By morning, the ash had blown east. But the court has not sinned only once. A second letter followed, then a third. The messengers grew more ornate, then more armed. First came silk robes, then came chainmail. By the fourth letter, it was not a satrap who came. It was a fire priest. He wore white robes and a gaze like sharpened bone. His words were slow and syruped in piety. "Daughter of dust," he said, "the flame does not ask. It consumes." Mazdakad stared at him until the silence grew teeth. Then she spoke. Then let it try. Words spread faster than the horses. In the villages between hills and thorns, between the borders of dusk and decree, they began to whisper again. Not of gods, but of her, the witch who burns letters, the woman who speaks back to fire. The Magi did not take well to legend. Legends defied borders. Legends stirred memory. And worst of all, legends made the people look away from the temple. So the fifth letter did not come by messenger. It came by torch. In the blackest part of the month, when the moon was only rumor, they came with flames. Not to speak, not to summon, but to burn. Mazdakad was not home. The hut was ash by morning. The pomegranate tree outside it, old as 3 generations, split by lightning, healed by hands that sang, smoldered. But in the smoke, footprints led east. And where she went, so went the wind. They found her in the hills above Nishaper, not cloaked in shadows, but teaching children the names of plants that bloom where fire does not reach. She had no staff, no altar, no symbol, but the old language spoken softly, a dialect not written for 300 years. A boy with ash on his hands traced letters in the dirt. Mazdakad nodded. Word spread like frost. She was not fleeing. She was planting. The temple in Shaper was quiet, half abandoned, half haunted by birds that never migrated. She did not claim it. She cleaned it. She swept ash into circles, not lines. She whispered the old rites, not as spells, but as remembering. They came again, this time in force. Not priests, but soldiers. Chainmail and polished boots. Decrees pinned to spears. The village held its breath. Mazdakad stood in the doorway, not defiant, not meek, only present. The commander read the charge. Unlawful gathering. Subversion of doctrine. Propagation of unsanctioned belief. She listened, and when they moved to seize her, the villagers stepped forward. Not in violence, in presence. One by one, then 10, then 30. Elders, children, mothers holding infants with fevered cheeks. They formed no line, no shield, no chant, just a wall of breath and memory. Who among you knows her name? The captain barked. None answered, because none had written it. They had only spoken it in the dark. And now that was enough. The soldiers withdrew. The scrolls remained unread. And Mazdakad, for the first time in many nights, slept beneath the pomegranate moon without watching the door. In the marble halls of Tessaphon, where doctrine dripped from tongues like oil and walls echoed with the cautious praise of frightened men, they gathered. Priests, viziers, magi draped in saffron and smoke. They did not speak her name aloud, not anymore. They spoke instead of the breach, the spread, the stain. One priest unfurled a scroll, its ink smudged from too many trembling fingers. She defies summons. She draws crowds. She is not sanctioned. Another, younger, leaned in. She is believed. That was the true crime. Not the herbs. Not the chants. Not even the refusal to kneel. It was belief. Quiet, contagious belief. And so they drafted a doctrine. Not law. Not edict. But something softer, stickier, easier to plant in the minds of the faithful. They called it the last ember. A decree whispered rather than shouted. The flame must be singular. All others are embers, dangerous, dying, deceitful. They circulated it through sermons, through schoolrooms, through the lips of tired bureaucrats. In the cities, it was repeated with shrugging certainty. In the villages, it was recited with less conviction. In the Shaper, it was met with silence. Mazdakad read the text from a recovered scroll. She said nothing as she passed it to her student, a girl of 9 with coal under her fingernails and a question in her throat. Why do they fear embers? Mazdakad answered, because they forget fire begins small. And so, in response to doctrine, she did not argue. She taught. She planted herbs known only to the forgotten. She hosted no rituals, only meals. She burned no incense, only bread. And when someone asked for a prayer, she offered silence that lingered longer than words ever could. Doctrines do not fear confrontation. They fear irrelevance. And Mazdakad's greatest weapon was to become indispensable. In the hills, fever broke only after her poultices were laid. Fields yielded more when her chants marked their furrows. Mothers swore their infants slept easier when her shadow passed the door. So the doctrine persisted, but so did she. And when the wind shifted, when new letters were drafted, they came no longer addressed to her, but to those who dared speak her name. It was said that there once flowed a river through the heart of Khorasan whose name was older than ink, and whose banks held the memory of every foot that ever crossed them. But now it had no name. The empire had renamed it after a martyr of their faith. The locals still bathed in it, but no one whispered to it anymore. No offerings, no songs, only the sound of water forgetting. Mazdakad came to it at dusk, cloak heavy with travel, sandals soaked in red clay. She knelt by the water and touched her forehead to the shallows. "Forgive us," she murmured. for giving you another's name. She took no students here. She did not teach. She watched. Birds no longer nested in the reeds. The frogs had gone silent. She knew what it meant. Not punishment. Withdrawal. The land had turned its face. The people, in chasing a single god, had asked the others to leave. And leave they did. But the river remembered her. In small ways. The water curved gently around her ankles, as if embracing. The air warm for a breath. And a fish, thin as a needle and silver as a secret, leapt once, then vanished. That night, she lit no fire. She sat in the dark, whispering names that had not been spoken since the first dynasty fell. She did not sleep. She waited. And at midnight a child came, barefoot, eyes wide, no fear. They took my mother, she said. Said she healed without license. Mazdakad looked at the river, then at the girl. What's your name? The child did not answer. Mazdakad smiled. Good. By morning, they were gone. From the place where she had knelt, the reeds grew again, and the villagers swore that the frogs returned. The river, they said, had begun to remember. It was not marked on any map. No road led to it. No name adorned it. Just a patch of highland tucked between two ridgelines like a secret cupped in stone palms. Here the wind changed voice. Here seeds sprouted where none had been planted. And here Mazdakad began to gather those who no longer fit. Not an army, a gathering, a garden, a former fire priest who had abandoned his robes but still woke reciting prayers. A midwife with burnt hands and dreams of birds. A child who spoke to insects and had never lied. They came singly, quietly, never more than one in a day. And each brought something not easily found. An unwritten word, an extinct herb, a forgotten rite once whispered to mountains. Mazdakad welcomed them not with rituals, but with labor. One dug terraces, another rerouted water with clay channels. One wove nettle in a cloth. And from these hands, the garden bloomed. Not orderly, not imperial, wild, fragrant, full of colors that had no names in the empire's tongue. There were no rules, only remembrance. Every plant was planted for a reason, to soothe, to awaken, to poison, to mend. Every stone was placed for a purpose, even if that purpose was to catch light. In time, they built a circle, not a temple, not a fortress, just a place without corners. Its center was open to sky. There were no guards, only watchers. And on some nights, songs rose that carried no melody, only intent. They were called heretics, witches, dissidents. But among themselves, they said nothing. No names, no hierarchy, no proclamations, only tending, only flame. And when riders came, always they came, they found only wind. The garden vanished with the morning mist. Moved, reformed, scattered like seeds, only Mazdakad knew how to call back. She had built not a rebellion, but a rhythm. And in that rhythm, the old gods stirred. They did not send her summons. This time they sent a scribe. He came alone, riding a weary mule, ink-stained fingers and a scroll case strapped to his back like a confession. No guards, no vanir, just dust in his hair and fear in his eyes. His name was Tarsis, and he claimed to be only a recorder. Mazdakad met him at the edge of the garden, where nettle grew thick and hummingbirds paused mid-flight. Speak, then, she said, if you must record. He unrolled the parchment slowly, careful not to let the wind take it. It bore no decree, no charge, only questions. What is your doctrine? She smiled. What the land remembers. What is your title? I left it in the fire. What is your allegiance? To those who still ask, he wrote each answer in silence. No yaiment, only trembling ink. The questioning took 3 days. Each night, Tarsis slept beneath woven stars, listening to wind chimes made of bone and bronze. He watched how children brought herbs to the elders, how no one bowed, but everyone listened. On the fourth morning, he didn't ask questions. He simply sat beside Mazdakad and asked, "Do you want to be remembered?" She looked at him, tired kind. "No, but I want them to remember themselves." Tarsus left before dawn. He took no copy of the interview, only the memory. Weeks later, sermons began to shift. A line added here, a word softened there. The court did not claim defeat, but somewhere in Ctesiphon, a scroll remained half-written, and beside it, a recorder who had begun to forget whose doctrine he once served. And so, the trial was never held, but its echoes planted gardens in places no torch would find. They thought the old ways had no clocks, no calendars, no holy day that could shake the pillars of doctrine. But then came the night. The temples of fire stretched across the empire like beads on a burning necklace. From the southern deserts of Kerman to the frost-kissed roofs of Ray, each was expected to light its central flame at the same hour, midnight, under a new moon, once each season. It was the most sacred rite, the renewal of light. But on that night, something changed. No flame rose. In the mountain temples, priests struck flint until their knuckles bled. In the city centers, acolytes blamed wind and damp wood. In the capital, 1,000 eyes stared in stunned silence as the great flame of Ctesiphon refused to catch. They tried again and again. Oil was poured. Sacred chants were shouted. The high magus screamed prayers into the smoke. But nothing burned. Only smoke curled. Only silence answered. Far away, in a valley where the stars ran thick like honey over stone, Mazdakad watched from a hill. She said no words, only scattered salt over a fire that did not need wood. In villages that night, the people spoke of it differently. Some said it was the gods returning. Others said it was the land rejecting the empire's fire. But those who had seen her, seen the witch in red, the one whose name was never written, they said nothing. They only lit lanterns of oil and hung them in trees, not to outshine the temples, only to remember. And the empire, for all its power, could not punish a night. They say she walked alone into the canyon where 3 rivers once met, and now only dry stone argued with wind. But others say she did not walk at all, that she rode a mule cloaked in thistle branches, wearing no veil, only salt on her forehead and dust in her mouth. Either way, the canyon held the last ritual ever spoken aloud by a daughter of the old rites. She did not bring fire. She brought 7 jars, clay-bound, sealed with beeswax, carried by hand across hills where wolves watched but did not howl. Each jar held an offering. Crushed juniper, tears from widows, the breath of a newborn, a feather scorched by lightning, water from a well blessed in silence, blood from her own fingertip, and ash. No flames were lit, only circles drawn, only salt spread like a map across the canyon floor. She sat in the center and whispered, not in chant, not in declaration, but in memory. Not one word was new. All had been spoken before, but never together, never in this place. Above her, vultures circled, then vanished. Below, the stones grew warm. They say the air that day turned thick like breath before storm. That bees swarmed without stinging. That men in towers miles away dropped their scrolls for reasons they could not name. When she finished, she broke the jars, not with anger, with purpose. Each one shattered where it should. One on the highest ridge, one at the bend of the dry river, one beneath the roots of the fig tree that had never borne fruit. And when she shattered the last, the one with ash, she knelt, touched her head to the ground, and vanished. No one found her cloak. No one is. No sign but the salt that would not blow away. And for generations after, those who entered that canyon did not speak. They left jars, not 7, only one, filled with whatever they carried that the world refused to hold. And the wind sometimes would lift the lid and whisper, "She remembers." They did not speak her name in the capital. Not anymore. Not even to curse it. The court preferred silence, like a wall against memory. But silence in empires never lasts. It cracks, peels, lets wind slip through. No orders were issued for her capture. No bounty posted, but neither was she pardoned. Her story passed beyond law. It passed into firelight, into the smoke of public baths, into the rhythm of lullabies sung too low to be heard by priests. In the southern provinces, women named their daughters Mazza or Dakad and claimed it meant spring. In the east, men carved pomegranate trees into the doorposts of temples and swore it was just decoration. In the west, soldiers lit lamps with salt instead of oil and refused to explain why. And every few years, a stranger would ride into a village, buy no bread, speak no lie, and leave behind a broken jar filled with herbs that only bloomed in shadow. The Magi, for all their flames, never quite stamped it out. You cannot burn wind. You cannot bind a name that was never written. They built new temples, raised new statues. They wrote new songs and banned the old. But the dust still remembered. And on some nights, when the moon was only a bruise behind the clouds, children whispered of the woman who walked with salt in her hands and vanished into the breath of the earth. Not dead, not gone, just returned to where the fire forgets to burn, where legend begins, where gods, unasked, still listen.